Pleasure to see everyone. I love seeing people's names written in black and white. It's really a pleasure to see that. Just kidding. Thanks all for showing your faces. And for those who are just at least joining with us in spirit, we can feel your presence here. So thanks for taking the time to share. Today's Middot that we're going to be looking at for the upcoming day of the Sefirat HaOmer is Yesod ShebeGevura. Now, Yesod, and as I've mentioned already in the past, the Midos up until this point have really been direct expressions of the Hanhagas Hashem. Really, the first three Midos, Chesed, Gevura, and Tiferes, are the essence of the Hanhaga, the way that Hashem manifests in the world. The remaining Midos are extensions or implications of those Midos. We saw the parallel between Netzach and Hod with Chesed and Gevura. And what we're looking at tonight is the aspect of Yesod as manifest within the Midah of Gevura. So what is Yesod? So in Kabbalistic literature, Yesod and Malchus work in tandem. They're aligned with each other. They both run down the Kav Emtsai in the hierarchy, the structure of Yosher, in the Kabbalistic kind of linear system of the Sephiros. Yesod is seen as the delivery mechanism of the first five of the Midos. So what we've seen until now, as far as the first five steps, Chesed through Hod, are the Hanhaga and its manifestations. We saw the Nitzchios, the eternal fight, the eternality of Hashem's Gilui of his Chesed, of his commitment to life in all its facets. We saw the Hod, which is the inner conviction, the value that's there. Yesod is seen as the funnel, the channel that allows all of that Gilui to begin reaching towards the world. Now, I know that this sounds abstract and hopefully going to make it a little bit more concrete. And as we're going to see tomorrow, and as we get further along in the Midos, we spend a full week on Yesod and Malchus respectively. Malchus is the actual place where the Gilui itself happens in the world. In other words, all of the Midos, at whatever level that they occur at, in the Hishtalshalos from Hashem as the Ein Sof towards the physical world, Malchus is the place where the realm of the spiritual, the empire of spirituality, of the Ruchniistic world, where the Sephiros come to life and kind of interface with humanity in a way that we can experience them. So what Yesod is in its essence, as the Sfarim describe it, is a notion of hiskashros, of connectivity, that there's a means by which the upper five Sephiros, the first five in the Hanhaga, become manifest in the world, as I've mentioned. And there's a very interesting metaphor that's given for this by one of the great early on students of the Baal Shem Tov, a fellow by the name of Reb Avram HaMalach. He was known as Reb Avram the Angel. He was the only son of the Maggid of Mezrich, one of the main students of the Baal Shem. And he gives the following analogy. He was known as Avram the Malach because the Baal Shem Tov gave a bracha to the Maggid of Mezrich later on in life that he should have a son who was uncomparable. And apparently the story goes that a Malach came and announced the birth of this child, known as an incredible expert in the world of the Kabbalah of the Baal Shem. He wrote a sefer called Chesed LaAvram, which deals with the Sephiros. And he gives the following explanation for Yesod. He said, Yesod hu iskashros ligmor kol davar mimidos hachamisha she'amarnu. Yesod is the connectivity. It's the bond which allows the completion of all of the five midos before. He gives the following parable. He says, imagine a person has not seen his beloved child for many, many years. And he starts having the opportunity. It's coming up. He's getting closer. He's finally going to be able to see and to actualize that relationship. He's been yearning and desiring to have that relationship. So all sorts of distractions that might come in his way don't get in the way of him and his entire focus on allowing my desires and my love and all of my interests to come into full manifestation. So he says that what Yesod is, meaning he's not going to be distracted by anything. A wild animal can attack him over here. Difficult, issues can get in his way. But he's going to plow forward because he's got his entire mind and spirit set upon the destination of delivering his emotions, his feelings, towards where they're supposed to manifest. So he goes on to explain that this notion of connectivity, of a yearning desire to deliver, is really a midah of its own. Meaning it's not something that you would take for granted in any of the other middos. In other words, just because someone has the commitment to fight the good fight, who has that core value within themselves, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to deliver on any of those things. It doesn't mean that when it comes through, it will be fully unadulterated in its expression at the end of the process. What the midah of Yesod comes to teach us is that when Hashem expresses, when Hashem manifests His will in the world, it's unadulterated. It's purely what it was from the beginning, is expressed in its entirety when it arrives at the layer of life that we can experience it at. The aspect of Yesod, then, is that not only is there an undying foundation, which is the notion of Yesod, in the literal word of Yesod, meaning foundation, there's a place that it all manifests, there's a place where Hashem delivers and is fully expressive, fully vulnerable as far as what He desires to give across, those middos, and how they actually end up being manifest. That there's a fullness, a completion, and that there's a total expression to it. There's nothing being held back as far as the middos are being delivered. And that's why in the Kabbalistic metaphors, in the body of an Adam, which is seen as expressing all the different components of the middos, Yesod is keneged the Mila, bris Mila. And that's because it's a place of the body, which is the connective organ of the body. It's the place where a person can connect outside of himself to another in an intimate way. But it's also a place where, if you consider the Mila component of it, it's a place of vulnerability, because the Mila represents cutting away the protective element of self in order to become a higher level of sensitivity, and thereby the connection is more potent, is more complete. And so in that sense, Yesod represents the fullness of how the middos come to manifest in our life, that there is nothing being held back, that there's full vulnerability and openness to share that which Hashem wishes to share at the top of the chain. So what this means for us, when we look at this as far as the practical level for us, we find a notion talked about in the Gemara in Shabbos, where as far as we're dealing with this in the Yesod ShebeGevura as an expression of Gevura, the Gemara says, Kol dayan shadan din emes la'amito, anybody who judges pure justice, unadulterated justice, afilu sha'a echas, even for one moment, ma'ale alav hakasuv ki'ilu nasa shutaf la'kadosh baruch hu b'maaseh bereishis. The Torah considers it as if you become partners with Hashem in Maaseh Bereishis. So you are partners in creating the world. Brings an interesting drasha, ksiv hacha, the pasuk says by Moshe Rabbeinu, vayamod ha'am al Moshe min haboker ad ha'erev, that the nation stood in the presence of Moshe from morning until evening, awaiting his justice. Uksiv hasam vayi erev vayi boker yom echad, that there was night, there was evening, there was morning, one day. So this juxtaposition of the term erev and boker in the creation narrative is being paralleled with how Moshe spent min haboker ad ha'erev in justice, and it's telling us that just as Hashem creates the world in boker ad erev, so too when a person is involved in pure din, there's a collaboration with Hashem at the macro scale. In other words, in the same way that when Hashem creates Bria, as we're seeing here in Yesod, when Hashem creates Bria, whatever way that He ultimately is manifesting Himself, the desires, the dreams that Hashem has for creation, kivayachol, are fully manifest, and they come to fruition at the level that we can experience them. And there's a level of integrity to the dream that He originally had, that which Hashem originally desired is what ultimately becomes manifest and that becomes expressed. When a person is involved in din, in the truest sense, they're also collaborating with Hashem on that level of Yesod. They're having that integrity to the initial vision that Hashem had for creation, which is that Hashem desired the things which He wants, for it to be a world of truth, a world of life, a world which arrives at the ultimate tov, which basically comes full circle to Hashem's existence itself, that brings us back to be the Baalei Hatov that Hashem desired from the beginning. And when a person is involved in that process, they find themselves becoming partners and almost equals with Hashem as far as the level of integrity that they have. And this aspect of the unadulterated integrity is something that comes across also very famously. People throw around, and this is the pasuk that's frequently quoted in the Kabbalistic text, this notion of tzaddik Yesod Olam, that the righteous person is the foundation of the world, playing on this notion of Yesod. The Zohar already brings this, that Yesod is called tzaddik, it makes Hashem called a tzaddik. The notion of a tzaddik is a person who has full integrity, who lives by the values that they ascribe themselves to, who has that level of integrity. And this is the notion that it's beautifully brought out, the Gemara at the end of Makos, which talks about how through successive generations, when they found that people were having more and more difficult time adhering to the entire set of 613 mitzvos. So the Gemara says that in successive generations, they kind of boiled down the mitzvos to fewer and fewer. Starts with 13 and goes to 11 and 9 and 7 and 5 and 3, and ultimately it comes down to the bottom line, that it says that Ba Chabakuk v'hamidan al achas, that Chabakuk came along and established all of the mitzvos on one mitzvah. That if he could kind of boil down the essence of what it means to be involved in Torah, what it would come down to is the mitzvah of, as he says, the tzaddik be'emunaso yichyeh. The notion that a tzaddik lives by his ne'emanus, lives by his faithfulness. What is that idea? So the idea there is that I think that there's a lot to be said about it, but the notion is that we refer to Hashem as having ne'emanus. An amazing pasuk towards the end of the Torah in Ha'azinu, where the Torah describes Hashem as an El Emunah Ve'ein Avel. Hashem is a God of Emunah. He's a Kel Emunah. Tzaddik Ve'yasharhu. He's righteous and he's straightforward. So what does it mean that Hashem is Tzaddik Ve'yashar? Says the Sifri, a Kel Emunah Shehe'emin Ba'olamo Ubar'o. That Hashem believed in his world and created it. Hashem believed in his world. I mean, so for the Western notion of belief, that's a very difficult pill to swallow. I mean, belief for the Westerner means essentially blind faith. I'm going to accept something on a premise that I don't actually know, and I'm going to run with it. But if we understand the notion of emunah as commitment, as faithfulness, as being fully committed to the dream that you have, and no matter how difficult and challenging the path is, you maintain that level of ne'emanus to your dream, to your endeavor. What Hashem has when He begins the world is a emunah in the world, is an emunah in us, an integrity and a commitment and a faith that we will carry through, and that ultimately we are going to persevere and we are going to reach the success. Now, of course, when we think about it on the level of the Ein Sof, the creator of the universe, Hashem knows He doesn't require faithfulness. Obviously, if He's creating the world, then it succeeds. We have to think about it again. We're talking from within the matrix. That within the world, when you consider it, to think about what it takes from Hashem's standpoint to create the world, the amount of ne'emanus that He must have in us is such that when we wake up every single morning, that's exactly what we say. We literally say this every single morning. We get up and we say, Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shechazarta bi nishmati bechemla, you returned my soul back to me with compassion. Rabba emunasecha, you have so much emunah in me. You have so much belief in me. I thought we should be waking up in the morning saying we believe in Him. And instead we're talking about how He believes in us. It's because when we wake up in the morning and we realize, by God, I don't have to be here. Hashem could just pull the plug on this program any day. I mean, think about how I've been living my life up until now. Frankly, I'm surprised He hasn't pulled the plug. The fact that I can wake up the next morning and say, thank God I'm alive, and that Hashem has so much belief in me, that He knows and He's committed and He's faithful to my mission, to my journey. That's the tzidkus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the ne'emanus. That's the yesod that everything is based on. The place that Hashem delivers The place that we see Hashem's tzidkus is in the fact that He's patient with us, that He allows us to travel along that journey because He has that ne'emanus, and that He unquestionably delivers. He is that tzaddik. He is the zachar, the one who's fulfilling us, who's providing to us, who's opened us into His dream, so to speak, for the world, and has said, I want you to participate with me. And that when you can live a life of being done din emet la'amito, and you can have that level of truth and commitment to the journey along with me, you can be partners in Ma'aseh Bereshit along with me. And so I think one implication of this is that, first of all, we need to deliver. And what I mean by that is that when we have those commitments in our lives, when we've made our determination, we need to make sure that we are giving over 100% of who we are within those elements of self-expression. When we are living a life of a gibor, when we've chosen where we're going to hold back and where we are going to express, when we've found the place where the aspects of our life are harmonious, and when we've committed ourselves to the eternal battle, we need to make sure that the person who's delivering in that eternal battle is delivering 100%. That's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu does. That's the ne'emanut that we attempt to mirror in our own lives. And I'll close, just because it's almost like a chazaka at this point, a beautiful quote from Rav Kook, where Rav Kook says an amazing thing in one of his journals that he kept. He says the following beautiful line. He says, "Lo ya'aseh adam et nafsho sheker." A person cannot make his soul into a liar. You can't make yourself a falsehood. Don't do it. Al yichazev et hargoshotav hapnimiyot mitoch sa'arat hadichifa shel haskamat harabim. Don't deny your own inner yearnings, the feelings that are bubbling up within yourself, because of the social pressure which comes from the collective recognition and what's deemed appropriate by the masses. Haskamat harabim. And he says that if a person feels if a person feels those sensations of elevation within himself towards a particular faculty of himself, see to it to satiate yourself fully. Tamid mishoda ta'anugim ha'elyonim, from the nurse of the delighted, exalted pleasures that you find yourself connecting to. Mimakom shelibo chafetz, from the place that your heart truly desires. And he's paraphrasing here the Gemara that says, Ein adam lomed Torah ela mimakom shelibo chafetz. A person shouldn't even learn Torah except from a place that his heart desires. That notion that when you have those feelings within yourself, you should allow them to manifest fully and not to hold back a sincere yearning within oneself. If it is coming from one's soul and is coming from a pure place, then it needs to be delivered in its entirety. And that's the notion of Yesod, that in the same way that Hashem delivers, and that Hashem is vulnerable with us, and is faithful to us, and is committed to us, and provides everything to us as part of the channeling through the Midah of Gevura, we should find within ourselves the capacity to do the same, and to live with that level of ne'emanus mirrored back towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and find within ourselves the ability to take upon ourselves one mitzvah. Tzadik be'amunato yichyeh. Sure, it's got a couple of ramifications, a couple of details that might come along with it. But if a person commits himself to the life of a tzaddik, and realizes that just because they're living a life of a tzaddik doesn't mean that they won't stumble, as Rav Hutner writes beautifully in a letter, the Sheva Yipol Tzaddik Vikam, that a tzaddik, a righteous person, falls 7 times, and it's that very stumbling that allows him to get back up, and indeed it's that stumbling that makes him the tzaddik, because he's committed himself to the journey to full, unadulterated expression, even when it puts risk to himself. It's that aspect of Yesod, of the Ne'emanus, which this Midah is encouraging us to bring into ourselves. And as we continue along this journey, from the first small footsteps of the path of freedom at Pesach, until we reach the ultimate culmination of freedom, of Ein Lecha Ben Chorin Ela Misha Osek B'Torah, we should find within ourselves the capacity to identify within ourselves those yearnings for truth, for connectivity with Hashem, and not stifle those yearnings, but find the place within which your unique yearnings can be manifested in your relationship with God in a way which is fully unadulterated. Because there's always going to be areas in your life where there are things that you need to do, and you got to do them, and you might do them half-hearted. If you're not a halacha guy, you still got to learn halacha. And if you're not into Kabbalah, you still at some point you might have to dabble. And if you're not into Tanakh, you still have an obligation. But a person needs to identify within himself where is the area where he has that deep yearning to express. And make sure that that yearning is fully manifest. And that the yearning as manifest is a fulfillment of your ne'emanus to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and ultimately to yourself as well. So those are some thoughts to carry us through tomorrow's Midah, Yesod ShebeGevura. Thanks again for hanging out with me for a few minutes. Nice to see you all again. And let's just see, there's some comments over here. The mimer from Rav Kook. That's in a collection that they published called Shmona Kvatzim. It's on the source sheet that I posted in the chat. Emes to who you are. Beautiful. Yeah, emes to who you are. I mean, there is definitely a truth that's involved in Yesod. There's I forgot to mention it earlier, but that's why Yesod and Tiferet both run along the middle, the Kava Emtzai, in the manifestation of the Sefirot. Yesod is directly aligned with Tiferet. Tiferet is also known as Emes, Titan Emes Liakov, the notion of beauty and truth, which we're going to learn about more robustly next week. Yes, there's definitely a fullness, a completion to Yesod, which is a direct manifestation of that Tiferes. The Emes of Tiferes really comes across. Like we saw when we talked about Tiferes within Gevura, that Tiferet is really the fullness of Din, requires both Chesed and Gevura in harmony with each other. Right? As like we talked about, sensitivity is part of objectivity. So the fullness of Emes has to come across in its entirety within Yesod. So yeah, they're definitely related. But next week, as we go through all the components of Tiferes, hopefully we'll get a clearer picture of how that works.